Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Anti-News Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Grasso, and thank you for tuning in. Today's date is May 3rd, and as always, I've got 5 happy stories for you. First off, NASA makes Mars more breathable. Scientists create a plastic that eats itself. And a waitress gets a big tip from the town when a customer doesn't give one. After the music break, researchers figure out something that might help treat trauma, and a fraternity gets together to help out the old woman who used to cook for them. Since the early days of science fiction, the idea of colonizing other planets has fascinated nerds and the everyday man alike. With Mars being the most likely candidate for a backup Earth, and the most explored one, people have started to think about the major issues that getting life on Mars faces. We've found water on Mars, and we have ways to grow food as well, but that still leaves one big issue to deal with: oxygen. We need it to breathe, but just how do we get it there? Well, all NASA needed to solve this problem was a little MOXIE. MOXIE stands for Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, which is a toaster-sized experimental instrument that was put aboard Perseverance, a new 6-wheeled robot that NASA put on Mars. The red planet has a thin, carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere, and through the use of MOXIE, Perseverance was able to turn some of that into oxygen. The plan is to use this to create and store oxygen to help power rockets so that they can lift off from Mars, but this could lead towards creating oxygen for astronauts to breathe themselves. Jim Ruder of NASA gave this statement: "This is a critical first step at converting carbon dioxide to oxygen on Mars. MOXIE has more work to do, but the results from this technology demonstration are full of promise as we move toward our goal of one day seeing humans on Mars. Oxygen isn't just the stuff we breathe. Rocket propellant depends on oxygen, and future explorers will depend on producing propellant on Mars to make the trip home." MOXIE separates oxygen atoms from carbon dioxide molecules, which are made up from 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. This creates carbon monoxide, which is then let out into the Martian atmosphere. Because the process makes a lot of heat, MOXIE was built with heat-resistant parts and was given a thin gold coating that reflects infrared heat to keep Perseverance safe from the heat as well. In its first test, MOXIE produced 5 grams of oxygen, enough to breathe for 10 minutes, but is designed to make up to 10 grams per hour. It's funny that the names MOXIE and Perseverance were used. Perseverance is a continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, and MOXIE is force of character, determination, or nerve. Both of these things are important for making progress in anything you do, and if you keep at it, you can do just about anything. Persevere through the hard times, and don't let anyone say you can't do whatever it is you want to do. The problem with most plastics is that they take thousands of years to break down, if they break down at all. Even biodegradable plastics leave behind microplastics, which end up not just in the ocean, but in food, animals, and eventually humans. While there have been incredible steps towards reducing plastic waste, if we can't also deal with microplastics as well, we're not really solving the problem so much as hiding it. Thankfully, scientists at Berkeley's Lab and University of California, Berkeley, are working on a way to pull the rug off of these hidden plastics, instead of just sweeping them under it. Facility senior scientist Ting Zhu is a professor of chemistry, material science, and engineering at UC Berkeley. She's been leading a team that has been working on making a truly biodegradable plastic that doesn't leave behind microplastics. Most biodegradable plastics are made with polylactic acid or similar material, but visually you just can't tell the difference, so they more often than not end up in landfills. Even when properly disposed of, they still break down slower than regular plant life and end up contaminating organic waste as a result. On top of that, they're not as strong as regular plastic bags and only turn into microplastics, so the team had to approach the problem from a different angle and turn to nature for ideas. What they came up with was to try and use enzymes. In the wild, enzymes are what nature uses to break things down. And even when we die, enzymes cause our bodies to decompose naturally. So for this study, we asked ourselves, how can enzymes biodegrade plastic so it's part of nature? Professor Zhu explains. Apologies for the ensuing technical terms, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. In numerous experiments, Zhu and her team embedded trace amounts of BC lipase and proteinase K, two types of commercially available enzymes, in PLA and PCl plastic materials. They also added an enzyme protectant called 4-monomer random heteropolymer to help scatter the enzymes just a few nanometers apart. To the scientists' surprise, they discovered that all it takes to start the process for the plastic embedded with these enzymes is tap water or soil. This not only breaks down the plastics, but also the microplastics within a few weeks or even days. Strangely enough, the research team found that this only works when the BC lipase is nanodispersed. To put it in simpler terms, it's like when you add maple syrup to pancakes. They're easier to cut because they have something extra helping them out. Replace maple syrup with enzymes and plastic with pancakes, and you have what's been created. Many of us know nothing about how to use enzymes to break things down, but all of us are capable of doing our own experiments, no matter how small, at home. Think of something you've always been curious about and give it a try. Here's one idea that I've actually tested out myself. Take an egg and put it in the freezer overnight. Then cook it the next day to see how it turns out. While the results aren't as impressive as using enzymes to break down plastic, I promise you'll be excited by the results nonetheless. We've all been there. You're at a restaurant having a good time. You've had a nice meal, spent time with your friends or family, and now it's time to pay the bill. It's the hardest part of the night, figuring out how much to tip. Typically, 15% is the way to go, but how much does that 15% come to? Waiters and waitresses rely on those tips much more than you would think. A lot of restaurants pay their waiters and waitresses less because they expect tips to make up for that. So when a customer doesn't tip, it can really hurt a server's pay, as was the case for Beth when a customer left without tipping on an $86 bill. While even the customer said that she was wonderful, they left nothing for the tip. But fortunately, the community was behind Beth and raised more than she could have ever expected. In Morristown, New Jersey, Beth works as a waitress at the Glenbrook Brewery. For a number of reasons, the brewery has a 90-minute time limit for how long customers can stay, and has clearly posted this policy all over the restaurant and on their website. Beth went to a table to let them know that their 90 minutes was almost up, to which the customer was not happy about. They paid their bill, but instead of a tip, they left a note which said, "I'm sorry the server gets screwed on this. Don't kick paying customers out after 90 minutes. Because of this, Beth missed out on a $13 tip through no fault of her own. Beth is a nurse who picked up a second job to help put herself through a doctoral program, which makes the customer's rude action all the more hurtful. Afterwards, the bill was posted on a local Facebook page, the Morrison Stimulus Plan, with some explanation about the 90-minute policy and why it's in place. To the brewery's surprise, the post went viral and donations poured in for Beth, amounting to $1,700. She plans to put most of the money back into the community, only keeping some for herself. When we're upset, it's easy to lash out at those nearby, or feel like you want to get back at them for something someone else did to you. In this case, the customer was angry at the brewery's policy, and so they lashed out at the waitress. When you're feeling angry at something someone did, bring it up with that person, and don't take your anger out on someone else just because they were following the rules. Music is a great way to calm down when you're feeling upset, so let's go to the music break. That was Blue Boy, spelled with an I, by Lakey Inspired. Now, on to our last two stories. Trauma can be caused by anything. What means nothing to one person could have a massive impact on another's life. Stress, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, a feeling of numbness or disconnection, and many other things are symptoms of trauma. It's even possible to develop trauma from something that happened to your mother while you were in utero, such as substance abuse or domestic violence. Trauma is much easier to get than it is to get rid of. The memories associated with whatever caused the trauma can linger for the rest of a person's life. But new research could help treat trauma at the source. According to a study from Texas A&M University, researchers from the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences and the Institute for Neuroscience have possibly discovered a way to lessen the impact of traumatic memories by indirectly reactivating them. Theoretically, this could open a window where those memories could be altered or even erased completely. Stefan Marin, a professor of psychological and brain sciences, explains, "The one major challenge is when you do the extinction procedures, it doesn't erase the original trauma memory. It's always there and can bubble back up, which is what causes relapse for people who re-experience fear. Sometimes in therapy, the therapist will show the patient something that reminds them of the trauma to help dampen the response to it. For example, if someone had been in a bad car accident, the therapist might show them pictures of car accidents or play sounds from one. By seeing and hearing these things, without anything bad happening, it makes the hippocampus, the part of our brain involved in learning and memory, more active, and this can help make the traumatic memory vulnerable to being changed or even erased. More research needs to be done to see if this could get rid of the memory permanently, but this is a promising start. For those of you out there who are living with trauma, know that you are not alone. There are many others like you, and your trauma is valid, no matter what the cause of it is. If you're worried about seeing a therapist, whether because of the cost or the social stigma, there are online communities with others you can talk to. You can also talk to your family doctor about what you're feeling, and they can help you decide on what you want to do next. Whatever you're going through, know that things can get better. As any college student knows, cooking is an extremely important life skill. For many, it's the first time that you're having to make meals for yourself, without someone else being there to get food for you. Some fraternities and the like have cooks for them, apparently, as was the case with Phi Gamma Delta House and Jessie Hamilton, who worked there as the fraternity's cook for 14 years. Despite being in her 70s, she was still working 2 jobs in order to pay off the mortgage on her home. The fraternity brothers decided that that just wasn't right, and planned to pay back all of her kindness with interest. 30 years after having left the Phi Gamma Delta House at Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, the fraternity brothers who lived and studied there still remembered the kindness and cooking of Jessie Hamilton. Most of the fraternity brothers are now in their 50s and have their own lives, but Andrew Fusiotti still kept in touch with Hamilton even after graduating. Hamilton was still working in her 70s, both as a country club cook and a custodian at Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport, to pay her bills as well as her mortgage on the house she had bought in 2006. Well, Fusiotti didn't think that was right in the slightest, so he called up as many of his fraternity brothers as he could, and together, the 90 of them raised $51,675 for their favorite cook. Just days before her 74th birthday, some of the fraternity brothers went to her house wearing shirts that said Fiji on them, which was the house's nickname, and called it Jessie Hamilton Day. While there, they played a Let's Make a Deal styled game with 3 doors, all of which were winners. Behind door number 1 was a catered lunch from a local seafood restaurant and t-shirts with Jessie Hamilton Day on them. Behind door number 2 was a check for $6,675. And behind door number 3 was the big check of $45,000. The old cook is going to finally retire with the money, and is also planning on using some of it to go on a vacation to Hawaii. Hamilton told the Advocate of Baton Rouge, who captured the scene on video, "This has been a blessing to me. I have been worrying about how I was going to pay my house off. I am grateful for what God has done and has led them to do for me." There's returning a favor, and then there's expressing gratitude for someone's kindness. For no reason other than because they wanted to, these fraternity brothers helped out an old woman who had been there for them during their time at university, which for many is a tough time. If there's someone in your life who's always been there for you, try to let them know that you appreciate them and are grateful for everything they've done for you. After all, a little kindness can mean a whole lot. Here's today's advice. Take time to enjoy the simple things in life. A warm summer's day, a cup of tea, the sound of birds chirping or kids playing. Whatever small thing makes you happy, make sure you take the time to appreciate and enjoy it as much as you can. That's it for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. We're into May now. and may everything go as you planned it. If you would like to support this podcast, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, and until next time, remember that there is still some good in the world, you just gotta look for it. Take care out there, everyone.